Thanks for joining us on CBN News Channel. I'm Charlene Israel.
And I'm Ephraim Graham. President Obama launches his second day of economic speeches, blasting Washington for not fixing America's financial problems. He was sent to D.C. to do just that, and the issue has plagued his presidency. Now the president says it is time to focus on creating jobs. CBN News White House correspondent Jennifer Wishon has more.
Despite spending political capital on Obamacare, gun control, and immigration reform, the White House says job creation has always been President Obama's priority one.
It's good to be home in Illinois.
He kicked off his economic refocus tour at Knox College, the place he gave his first major speech as a U.S. Senator. While the economy is stronger than it was when Obama was first elected and the unemployment rate has improved, at 7.6%, it's still high, and lots of Americans are struggling.
But with this endless parade of distractions and political posturing and phony scandals, Washington's taken its eye off the ball.
It's the beginning of an economic tour and offensive against Republicans. Think liberal Tea Party. Organizing for Action, the president's advocacy arm, born out of his campaign machine, is gearing up for activism in August, while members of Congress are on recess.
Hello, OFA!
The president addressed the group in Washington as it planned its strategy. The idea is to engage Mr. Obama's grassroots to promote his policies and gain leverage over Republicans in the midterm elections.
Are you still fired up?
If Republicans feel threatened, they're not letting on. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell says all the president's generating is a collective bipartisan eye roll. Speaker John Boehner calls his efforts a hollow shell.
Well, it's an Easter egg with no candy in it, because Americans aren't asking the question, where are the speeches? They're asking, where are the jobs?
This fall, Congress and the president will have to tackle the budget and debt ceiling, and the expected showdown over taxes and spending threaten to harm the nation's still fragile economy. Jennifer Wishon, CBN News, the White House.
Joining us now with more is Kyriakos Zouras. He is a former advisor to President George W. Bush and an expert in turning around failing businesses. Now, Kyriakos, President Obama is accusing Washington of taking its eye off the ball, but he is offering no new policy initiatives. Who in Washington should be fixing the economy, if not the president?
It is the president. It's only the president. The president needs to show some leadership here. We've had enough of speeches, and it's the same old tired rhetoric that we hear from the president. He's responsible. He was the elected official. He's who the people voted in to take care of this thing. It's his responsibility to rally both sides together and get things done. And up until now, going into year 5, nothing has happened. And he needs to stop blaming Congress and Washington, and he needs to take a look at himself and really needs to start taking the initiative and step in and take action and lead like he's supposed to.
Which Obama economic policies from the past 4.5 years have actually worked?
Well, none of them have worked. We pumped a lot of money into the economy, and we still have high unemployment. Now, they're touting, a 7.8% unemployment. It's really 14.5 when you take the U6 measurement into effect, and not to mention that there's millions of people that aren't even counted in this that remain unemployed. We've spent a lot of money. He wants to build infrastructure, schools, and roads. That all creates more government jobs. He's expanded the government by 25%, and those jobs cost taxpayers money because they are paid for through taxpayers pumping taxes into the system. We don't need that. We need to let the free enterprise system, we need to let businesses grow, and he needs to back off on regulations, lower the tax rates, and let businesses invest in themselves and start hiring again and get people out of the unemployment line. That's where we need to start.
Now, the president says that he'll fight for the middle class by fighting for things like health care. What kind of economic impact are you expecting as Obamacare begins to kick in?
Well, that's a good question. I'm on the ground with small business in America, and I'll tell you right now, for the last couple of years since the idea of Obamacare coming into play, businesses all across the country have stopped hiring and they've stopped expansion and growth because they're preparing themselves for this high cost and expense. And what the government doesn't take into consideration when they make these mandates and they force these things on businesses is they don't understand that businesses are struggling and they're working on very, very thin margins right now. And when you force a business business to offer this type of expensive process to all its employees, they're forced to cut back people to under 30 hours a week and make them part-time and start laying people off and actually eliminate health care altogether. So this is only going to worsen the economy. It's not going to make it better. And as we know, now the cost of Obamacare is now 3 times what they originally expected it to be and getting higher every day.
Wow. Well, real quickly, are the president's economic speeches more about helping his party win the midterm congressional elections?
Yeah, and that's what this is all about. He's positioning himself for the 2014 coming up, and he's kind of positioning himself in the Democratic Party for the debt ceiling that's coming up again. And by the way, the sequester was his idea. He's the one that appointed a sub-Congress to do his job. We didn't vote a sub-Congress. We voted the people in Congress, and we voted him for president. We want them to do the work, and so far they've done nothing. So it's not looking good.
Kyriakos Zouras, thank you for joining us and for your insights today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
A federal judge has halted lawsuits challenging Detroit's bankruptcy case. The decision Wednesday by U.S. Bankruptcy Judge Stephen Rhodes freezes all the litigation that was filed in state courts. Retired city employees have been suing the Motor City over proposed pension cuts that are part of its bankruptcy filing. A local court had ruled earlier Governor Rick Snyder violated the state's constitution in approving the bankruptcy filing. A judge in federal court now says he will address those challenges later. But union officials vow to continue fighting.
This fight is going to go on. It's not going to stop at this point. We're going to continue to move forward. We've got people that we know that are going to be protected because there's a Constitution that says that they got that right to be protected by their pensions.
Federal Judge Rhodes must now weigh the facts and decide if the bankruptcy filing is valid before it can proceed. Detroit is about $18 billion in debt.
Investigators are trying to determine why a passenger train jumped the tracks in Spain, killing at least 78 people. The carnage from the wreck is shocking to see, bodies lying everywhere covered in blankets. More than 140 people were also injured in the crash. The government-owned train was traveling from Madrid late Wednesday when it derailed on a curvy stretch of track in Santiago de Compostela, that is in the northwestern part of the country. The tragedy occurred as the city was preparing for a major Christian religious festival.
Efforts to move NSA leaker Edward Snowden from the Moscow airport Wednesday failed. Russian authorities say he must stay there while his request for temporary asylum is considered. Back here in the United States, a move to stop the NSA surveillance programs failed in the House. But as Caitlin Burke reports, privacy rights advocates say the fight isn't over.
Edward Snowden's attorney says his client intends to stay in Russia. But whether Russia intends to let him remains unclear. Despite U.S. demands that Snowden be extradited, Russia is allowing Snowden's application for asylum to be considered.
Obviously, any move that would allow Mr. Snowden to depart the airport would be deeply disappointing.
A new ABC News Washington Post poll found that public opinion of Snowden has drastically changed over the last month. More than half of Americans now think he should be charged with a crime. That's up 10 points. As for the surveillance programs he revealed, 57% say it's more important for the government to stop potential terrorist attacks than to protect privacy. But that number is way down from what it used to be. Meanwhile, the House defeated a plan Wednesday that would have limited the NSA's domestic spying. But the vote is unlikely to be the final word on government intrusion on privacy.
All this amendment is intended to do is to curtail the ongoing dragnet collection and storage of the personal records of innocent Americans. It does not defund the NSA, and it would continue to allow them to conduct full-fledged surveillance as long as it relates to an actual investigation.
The amendment was attached to a defense spending bill and would have required the government to show any collection of data is related to a specific individual. Caitlin Burke, CBN News.
Supporters of the NSA program say they've stopped at least 50 terror plots across 20 countries, including 10 to 12 directed at the United States.
Religious leaders are lobbying the House for immigration reform at a prayer service on Capitol Hill Wednesday. Some Christians said Congress has a moral obligation to complete action on the issue. Regent University President Carlos Campo asked God to change lawmakers' hearts to help them reach an agreement.
Inaction is not an option today. De facto amnesty is not where we are. Ask any family that is caught in this limbo and they will tell you that we will join together in prayer and belief and support the representatives of our country to do the right thing, to bring our nation together again and heal it through immigration reform that will be lasting.
House Republicans have agreed to immigration reform in stages. They want to start with border security and citizenship for children who were brought into the U.S. illegally. The House's gradual approach puts them at odds with the Senate, which has approved a path to citizenship for the 11 million immigrants in the country.
Kentucky Senator Rand Paul says churches in America should challenge the IRS by speaking boldly from the pulpit without worrying about the consequences. In an exclusive interview with CBN News' David Brody, Paul issued this challenge to pastors.
What I would say to the churches is be bold and challenge them and say, in our church, we're still going to discuss good and evil and what we think of it, and so be it if the government wants to come and challenge us, because if we don't stand up and try to protect our God-given rights, they're going to be taken from us.
Many pastors are reluctant to speak out on political issues because they fear being audited or fined by the IRS.
A Philadelphia county defied a state ban on gay marriage Wednesday and issued licenses to 5 same-sex couples. They were issued in Montgomery County and are believed to be the first in Pennsylvania. This comes despite a 1996 law that defines marriage as a civil contract between a man and a woman in that state. A battle is expected to play out in court. The county's district attorney says the licenses are not legally valid in Pennsylvania, but it's not her place to intervene. And the state's attorney general has said she will not defend the gay marriage ban.
Israel is upping the pressure on Iran's nuclear program. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu renewed his threat for military action Wednesday in a message to Christian supporters. CBN News terrorism analyst Eric Stakelbeck has the story.
Thousands of pro-Israel supporters gathered in Washington, D.C. this week for the 8th annual Christians United for Israel Summit. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu spoke to the crowd via satellite. After thanking them for their unwavering support, he also warned that Israel isn't the only target of Iran's nuclear weapons program.
Those weapons aren't prepared to launch against Israel. They already have missiles that can hit Israel. Those ICBMs are intended for you to hit the United States, and they could have them very soon.
The summit attracted thousands of pro-Israel heavy hitters and lawmakers.
What's wrong with the world are regimes from Tehran to the Muslim Brotherhood in Cairo that permit or even encourage the continued persecution and murder of Christians and Jews.
The Christians in the Middle East and the Jews in the Middle East are standing because they have a power unlike any other power on the face of the earth. They have the power of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Pastor John Hagee founded Christians United for Israel, which includes more than 1 million members. Hagee told CBN News he's calling on their continued support of the Jewish people.
We must stand with Israel as they stand against the tyranny of Hezbollah, Hamas, Iran, the making of the bomb. There must never be a nuclear bomb in Iran. That is the single most important geopolitical issue facing America and the free world.
During their time in Washington, CUFI members also took to Capitol Hill to lobby lawmakers on behalf of Israel. Eric Stakelbeck, CBN News, Washington.
Coming up, the media's love affair with a pro-abortion politician and her pink shoes. How the Texas abortion battle proves the news media's bias. A federal judge is putting a key part of an Alabama abortion law on hold until next year. The law tightens restrictions on abortion providers, and opponents say it will force the closing of more than half the state's abortion clinics. It was set to go into effect August 15th, but U.S. District Judge Myron Thompson has delayed enforcement until March 24th of next year. That gives the court time to move forward with a lawsuit filed by Planned Parenthood and the American Civil Liberties Union.
Texas Democrat Wendy Davis is heading to Washington for a big fundraiser to boost her political career. If you watch the major media broadcast, you probably know who Wendy Davis is. If you haven't, you probably don't have a clue. Davis is the state senator who filibustered a pro-life bill in the Texas state legislature last month. Now she's on a fundraising tear thanks to numerous glowing reports on the evening news. And joining us now with more on this is Dan Gaynor. He is Vice President of Business and Culture at the Media Research Center. Dan, you guys have uncovered some revealing information about the news media's coverage of Wendy Davis and her pink shoes. Tell us about her sudden celebrity status.
Well, yeah, she is a media construct, a literally American ABC, NBC, CBS, American media created a celebrity out of somebody who was a nobody, all because they liked what she stood for. And so we compared, because we saw this endless stream of reports, we compared this to something that was actually news, and that was the Gosnell trial. So two sides of the abortion issue. In one case, the media did everything they could to suppress the story. That was Gosnell. They only did 13 minutes and 30 seconds of the entire 50-some days of the Gosnell trial. And then you get to Wendy Davis. She does her little filibuster. And, this is a minority party. The Democrats had no chance of winning this in Texas. Nevertheless, the media hyped that so much that she got 3 times the news coverage that the Gosnell trial did. No. She and her pink tennis shoes, which appeared more times than I care to count on network news shows.
Very interesting insight. Contrast the flowery coverage Davis received with how the media reported for pro-choice forces that were attacking pro-lifers in Texas.
Oh, well, the media don't like to talk about how the abortion lobby, how they get so over the top. They were chanting things, Satan's name, and I mean that's not a joke. That video went on conservative sites. Networks didn't mention any of it. They didn't talk about the things that the left tried to bring in to disrupt the second special session. They tried to bring in feces, jars of feces and urine, glitter, boxes and boxes of tampons they were going to throw on the floor of the legislature. But that got stopped, so the media didn't report it. If conservatives tried any sort of gimmick like that to disrupt a legislative session, the media would be all over them, calling them terrorists or something.
Wow. Let's talk real quickly again about the Kermit Gosnell trial, the case of the late-term abortion doctor convicted of murder. You might think the media would have been all over that story, but they were not. Why do you think so?
Oh, well, it's obvious that the media love court trials, from O.J. to Zimmerman to Casey Anthony. It's just any sort of sensational trial they'll cover, except for Gosnell, because Gosnell has become the metaphor for abortion in America. And the media and the left know it. And they're terrified about that reality. They don't want anything that chips away at abortion rights. I mean, we've got both Clinton and even Obama recently saying they believe abortion should be safe, available, and rare. But you look at the left and the media, when they talk about abortion, they want abortion safe, available up to the point of birth, taxpayer funded, and maybe even available after birth. It's just horrifying.
Indeed. Dan Gaynor, the Media Research Center, thank you so much for your time, as always.
Thank you, Ephraim.
Up next, the next move for a German Christian family fighting for asylum in America. Will the Supreme Court uphold their right to homeschool their children? Attorneys for a Christian couple that fled Germany to homeschool their children are taking their case to the U.S. Supreme Court. In Germany, parents who homeschool are hounded, fined, and sometimes even jailed.
But as CBN News has reported, the Obama administration says that is not enough reason to grant political asylum to the Romica family. CBN's Dale Hurd has their story.
The appeals court upheld the Obama administration's refusal of asylum to the Romica family. The Romicas fled Germany in 2008 facing criminal prosecution for homeschooling. They live in Tennessee. In 2010, they were granted political asylum by an immigration judge. But that decision was overturned by the Board of Immigration Appeals last year. Uwe and Hannelore Romeike began homeschooling in Germany because they didn't want their children exposed to things like witchcraft and graphic sex education that are taught in German schools.
Also, there were stories where they were encouraged to ask the devil for help instead of God, and actually the devil would help.
We found out what is in the textbooks. It's exactly the opposite from what the Bible tells us and teaches us, and we wanted to protect them.
While the appeals court acknowledged that the U.S. Constitution recognizes the rights of parents to homeschool, it refused to grant that what German homeschoolers face amounts to persecution deserving of asylum. Michael Ferris of the Homeschool Legal Defense Association, which represented the Romeikes, said, "We believe the Sixth Circuit is wrong and we will appeal their decision." The Romeikes told CBN News they're disappointed, but said God is in control. They know what they face in Germany if they're deported.
First, they would fine us with increasingly high fines, and they would threaten us to take away custody. There might be jail time too. But the main threat, I think, is the aspect of custody, because then, of course, the children are taken away from you completely, and I mean, that's what no family wants, right?
Dale Hurd, CBN News.
All because they want to homeschool their children.
It's just so painful. Imagine the thought of losing your children, your
Yes.
very own children.
Yes.
Unreal. Very unreal.
Keep them in our prayers.
Indeed, indeed.
Definitely. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
The most talked about baby in the world has a name. The new British royal prince was born, of course, on Monday, but his parents didn't make the name official until Wednesday.
Prince William and his wife Kate will call their son George Alexander Louis. George is the third in line to the throne and will be formally known as His Royal Highness Prince George of Cambridge. He's been busy since his birth. Wednesday, he met his great-grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II. Then Will and Kate brought him to Kate's parents' home in their village near London. The royal couple gave the public a sneak peek at baby George Tuesday, but no formal photos yet. We'll definitely keep you posted on that.
Okay.
Such a beautiful baby.
Yeah, they've asked to be left alone during this time to get to know their child.
I think it's important.
Yes, indeed.
Definitely. Well, that's all for now on the CBN News Channel. You can find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care most about at cbnnews.com.
And take the time to tell us what you think about the stories you've seen here today. You can do that on Facebook or at CBN News on Twitter. Hope you'll join us again right here next time. Have a great Thursday, everybody.
Introducing the CBN Bible from CBN.com. Now, an easier way to study the Bible and grow in your faith. Highlight your favorite verse. Read separate versions at a glance. Click and read a commentary. Or cross-reference your favorite verse using the Strong's Concordance. All the right tools to study the Bible, all in one place. The CBN Bible, available at cbn.com/Bible or the iTunes App Store.